Hello everyone. A warm welcome to all of you on behalf of Gujarat Government Physiotherapy Association. Today we are going to discuss about pediatric rehabilitation, whether to see evidence or function. Our guest speaker for today is very well known and renowned pediatric physiotherapist Dr. Kaushal Bhatt sir. Dr. Kaushal Bhatt sir is MPT with pediatrics with more than 12 years of experience. Dr. Kaushal sir is certified credentials in NDT from USA. Dr. Kaushal sir is certified in sensory integration from University of Southern California. He is certified in general movement assessment and DASI. He is founder and CEO of Kids Pediatric Physiotherapy Clinic Bhavnagar. Dr. Kaushal Bhatt sir is founder member and honorable treasurer of Society of Indian Physiotherapists. So, very welcome to you, sir, from GGPA. Over to you, sir. Let's begin our session.
Thank you, Disha, for this grand introduction. And thank you all of you for inviting me. Thank you, Hardik. Thank you and all your office bearer for inviting me for this lecture. First, let me share my screen. You see if it is okay. Is it okay?
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Fine. So I can start now.
Yes, sir.
Fine. So very good evening to all. First of all, I thank all of you for spending your time to listen this topic, pediatric rehab, whether to see evidence or function. I know you all are clinical therapists, and there is always a dilemma that when patient comes to us and when we are seeing everything on a new research paper, or we are seeing uh, some workshops or conference, all are talking about evidence. But when as a clinician we are seeing, we are work on function. So there is always dilemma whether to see evidence or function. So my today's lecture on pediatric rehab, whether to see evidence or function. Now let us start with uh, Prechel General Movement Assessment. Prechel General Movement Assessment is started by Hans Prechel and Krista in long back in Austria. I have done my General Movement Assessment course with Krista in 2018 in Mumbai. And let's talk about general movement assessment first, because it is a gold standard tool to assess cerebral palsy. This is an observation of unstimulated infant. We are just doing observation of this infant, evaluate integrity of young nervous system by just observation of spontaneous movement of young infant. We are not going to touch them. Best validated and reliable tool to predict cerebral palsy. By general movement assessment, children can refer early for targeted intervention. So it is used for early intervention as well, but can reassure families of high risk infant with consistent normal general movement. So when child who is newborn, either they are preterm or term age, when they are coming to us for early intervention, by just observing their movement, because age range of this general movement is 26-week post menstruation age to 22 weeks full term. It means almost 5 months you can see after birth or term birth. Okay, so in this full range you can see movement and you can notify it. Along with that, if there is something wrong, definitely you can start therapy early. A basic principle of early development is structure, function, and structure. Here, if you are able to see it, when there is a good structure, you are definitely getting good function, and when there is a function is good, you are getting structure. All right. Okay. Uh, Early development is activity dependent. It means when there is a hiccup in newborn, okay, breathing movement is good, which cause lung development. When there is a sucking, development of GI system. When there is eye movement, there is a retinal development, and there is general movement, synapse elimination. Fetal movements, what we are seeing are not reflexes, that are not intentional, that is a spontaneous movement that is spontaneously generated. So see this graph, this is chart we are using for the documentation in our clinic. Okay, this is the name, age, birth, how many weeks they are, post-terminal age. After that, we are just putting, I'm giving you few example with the videos in the next slides. Here synonyms are there. N means normal age specific general movement. H means hypokinesis. PR means poor repertoire. CH means chaotic general movement. CS cramp synchronized general movement. Here absent fidgety movement and abnormal fidgety movement, and F minus is absence of fidgety movement. Okay, here let me tell you that this we are, as I told you, 26-week post menstruation age preterm. This is term age. After that, up to 22 weeks, we are able to see the child with Pretzl general movement assessment. Okay, let me talk about the synonyms what I have used there. What is fidgety movement? It's a tiny movement in shoulder, wrist, ankle, pelvis. So you can able to see at the wrist, shoulder, ankle and pelvis or hip joint, and it appears at the 9 to 16 week post-term. Okay, it disappear when child crying, fussy or asleep. So it means that time we are not going to see your general movement or fidgety movement. All infants develop normally if fidgety movement is present and normal. See, this is a normal general movement. Okay, first let me see, they are day 2 of life. The way they are moving their hand, this hand, this leg, this leg, they are a twin, boy and girl. Okay, the head is moving, the trunk is moving. Now see, they are the age of 29 days. See, she is moving hand, leg, this leg. So full body movement you are able to see. Okay, it is dancing like movement on the one hand, second hand, one leg, other leg with body. It is normal general movement. I know it is little bit difficult for all of you to understand and the one go, but along with practice, definitely you can find out what movements are there. See, he is a this movement, upper extremity, lower extremity. This is normal general movement. Okay. Abnormal general movement in the preterm, term, and early postterm age are poor repertoire, is sequence of movement, intensity, speed, and range of motion is lack of variability. Cramp synchronized general movement, where limb and trunk appear rigid and contract almost simultaneously, therefore relax almost simultaneously. So it is like it contract, relax, contract, relax, and that time muscles appear rigid. So whenever there is a cramp synchronized general movement, patient might be going towards spastic cerebral palsy. Chaotic general movement is a large amplitude of movement with the high speed, are jerky, abrupt, and tremulous. Now we can see poor repertoire. General movement is very common in preterm infant, especially early low birth weight infants, which is having very low predictive power, and you can see during the first 2 weeks of life as well. Where when you can record it, you can record at the 2, 4, 6, and 10 days in NICU or either at home. It is very easy. You can record with your mobile camera at least one normal general movement. It means 94% are normal outcome. Now, as I told you, poor general movement is having very low predictive power. Okay, now you see here, uh, here patient born at the age of, you can see a PR at the age of 32 weeks. You are able to see at the PR at the age of 34 weeks. You are able to see PR at the age of 39 weeks. So when we are seeing PR at the age of 32, 34 and 39, it means we are getting PR early. So that means your child might get dyskinetic CP, inborn error of metabolism, Down syndrome, Rett syndrome, autism spectrum disorder, or normal development. any of this you can get. Now, general movement and cognitive development. What cognitive development tells us? Now, when PR become normal, poor repertoire at the age of 29 and 34 weeks you are able to see, but it become normal at the age of 40, before it become term age or 2 weeks, it means IQ is 13 points higher, so it is good. Cognitive is almost good. Okay, now you are able to see cramp synchronized general movement, which child mostly will go, as I told you, for spastic CP. Here, lack of variability of movement, patient becomes stiff, trunk and limb contract almost simultaneously and then relax almost simultaneously. Only 2% might be having mild neurological deficit, but 98% will go for the spastic CP, either unilateral or bilateral. Now, late onset of cramp synchronized movement. Suppose here child born at the age of 27 weeks preterm. Okay, at the age of 29 weeks, 34 weeks, 36 weeks, you are just seeing the poor repertoire. You are not getting CS, cramp synchronized movement. But late you are getting at the age of 40 weeks or at the age of 2 weeks term age. So definitely outcome is little better. Less severe CP, you can get GMFCS level 1 to 3. Okay, spastic 1 to 3. Now, consistent cramp synchronized general movement. Okay, from first at the age of 27 week born, at the age of 29 week, you just able to see here cramp poor repertoire, but 34, 39, and 3 weeks, you are consistent, you are getting cramp synchronized movement. It means it is going for severe cerebral palsy, GMFCS level 4 and 5. So as soon as you are getting cramp synchronized movement, patient is becoming more severe. Now, see this patient, uh, age is born, that is 28 weeks preterm. Okay, when I saw that child, that is at the age of 2 weeks term age. Okay, and that time I was feeling he's having PR, might be going towards cramp synchronized movement. See this video. Variety of movement is not there. Both is contracted and relaxed. Both lower limb contract together and relax. So I'm not sure here, but definitely he's having poor repertoire movement. See, contracted together and relaxed. So it is not a large variety of movement. You can see traveling from one upper limb to lower limb to this lower limb to upper limb along with trunk movement. This is not there. So I suspect it might going for cramp synchronized movement. Okay, can we go to other slide? Okay, this boy, okay, born on the full term age at the age of 40 weeks of post menstruation age. I saw him first at the age of, again, 2 weeks. Okay, he was just discharged from NICU, and see, I find out he might be having PR. So I was not very sure about how he will go. This is the day one recording I did. See, you are not able to see, as I told you, PR is having very low predictive power. So I was not sure. I just taught them few early intervention exercises to them, and I told them to record videos as well. Okay. Second time when they came to me, I assessed them at the age of 7 weeks. Okay. And that time at the age of 7 weeks, see, both the lower extremity will contract together and relax together. So here I was suspecting that he might be going for spastic cerebral palsy, because now I'm telling you he was having history of birth asphyxia. So many times when the child is having history of birth asphyxia, you might sometime get normal general movement also, but most of the time birth asphyxia patients are having uh, abnormal general movement. Okay, this boy is coming for a therapy. Okay, he developed spastic along with dyskinetic type. It means mixed type of cerebral palsy. Okay, this child full term born. Okay, and when I saw that child at the age of 10 weeks, here I am suspected I should get the fidgety movement. Fidgety movement is towards the midline. Almost at the 9 weeks we are getting upper extremity midline wrist movement. Okay, or shoulder movement more than 3 seconds is a normal fidgety movement, but if it is less than 3 seconds it is a spontaneous movement, which is also we can consider as a abnormal fidgety movement. Okay, let's see this video. Upper extremity is not going towards midline towards each other. Okay, just see upper extremity movement. It is not, both hands are not going towards midline. Okay, and this is the, if you are seeing absent fidgety movement along with circular arm movement, okay, you can suspect child might be going for dyskinetic type of cerebral palsy. Okay, and later I have included that types of cerebral palsy also just to refresh our basics. Okay, uh, let's talk about uh, cramp synchronized movement leads to the chaotic general movement. Okay, first if you are seeing PR, then it is going for chaotic, then it lead to cramp synchronized movement. Definitely child will go for a GMFCS level 4 to 5. Okay, you can predict early and you can start therapy accordingly. Now what research is saying? Research is saying there are lots of studies and you see the sensitivity and specificity. Here sensitivity is 95% and specificity is 96. Here specificity is 98 and sensitivity and specificity is 94 percentage. Here sensitivity is 98 and specificity is 91. So if you are taking lower range also in the large group or large number of participants, 91% you get results appropriate through general movement assessment. Okay, and sensitivity you can see here 98%. So it is very well reliable and valid tool to just observe and see that child is leading where. Systemic review of tests to predict CP, it is strongest evidence and highest predictive accuracy for general movement assessment. Okay, and the comparison of cerebral palsy along with few other methods of like MRI, cranial ultrasound and neurological examination. So when we are seeing that, we can see here there are 6 studies. Okay, as I told you there, 98% sensitivity and 91% specificity. MRI at the term age 86 to 100% variable and specificity 89 to 97%. Cranial ultrasound, uh, there are 74% sensitivity and 92% specificity, and neurological examination along 88% sensitivity and 87% specificity. Okay, so but just by observing movement we are getting good prediction of cerebral palsy. Okay, this is acquired brain injury general movement and outcome when their peer going for CS definitely at the age of 3 to 5 months term age. Abnormal neurological score outcome is bilateral spastic CP. When there is a PR is going towards CS at the late age, there is normal or abnormal neurological score unilateral cerebral palsy. When there are PR but later age, you're not getting CS, but at the age of 9 to 16 weeks, you are getting fidgety movement absent plus circular arm movement. It is a dyskinetic cerebral palsy. And if PR is going towards normal, might be having learning disability, those who are having preterm, because there are studies suggesting that preterm child are more prone to have sensory issues or might be having learning disability because of that sensory issues. Okay, so might have behavioral issues as well in when they are fidgety movement present also. So study is going on like how movement observation can lead us to diagnosis of autism or autism spectrum disorder or ADHD, but it is not yet published like cerebral palsy. There are lots and lots of study published in cerebral palsy and general movement. So when we are checking general movement, what should be avoided? Infant is fussing and crying, you cannot check general movement. Child is in sucking posture, child is having prolonged hiccuping, and the first day after birth, no, you cannot check. Environment interference by observer, it means parents or caregiver are continuously calling them or just disturbing them by showing some noise or toys. No, you cannot do that. Toys and colorful blanket, no. Mirrors, no. What observer, what we have to see, we are not tired and poor visual gestatal perception. It means when I was told see the child, when child is having on the black mat, definitely we are able to see more clearly. Okay, so this should be avoided. This was just the basic brief idea about how we are seeing the child who is a term or preterm age in the for early intervention. Now suppose child is started having you diagnose it as spastic or dyskinetic, whatever the type is. Now how we are going to assess that child? Okay, uh, as I told you, this is just a classification, new classification of cerebral palsy: motor type, spastic, dyskinetic, and ataxic. Under dyskinetic, there is a dystonia, athetosis, and chorea. Okay, this is available on net as well. Okay, you can definitely go through it. Spastic hyperreflexia and hyperreflexia, dyskinetic, there is a dystonia, athetosis and chorea, and ataxic is hyperreflexive or non-normal range. Okay, I have seen in my clinical practice that 90% of the time trunk is hypotonic, even in spastic also, even in dyskinetic also initially, but after that tone of the trunk change along with your therapy, either it is in a good way or bad way. Okay, so this is about just classification of cerebral palsy. Most of the people might be knowing this: GMFCS classification, gross motor function classification system. Level 1 is a walk without limitation, it means it's very good. Level 2, walks with limitations, they might need little support. Level 3, walks using handheld mobility device, okay, might be need a crutch. Okay, level 4, self mobility with limitations, may use powered mobility device, they might on the walker or they might be on the wheelchair. And level 4, transport in the manual wheelchair, like they are totally bedridden, we can say. Okay, they need help to do all the ideal activities. There are sub classification according to age wise. You can go to net and definitely you are getting very good age wise level classification also. Okay, uh, now how we are going to assess through ICF model, because now everywhere we are seeing the word ICF, International Classification of Function and Disability, word coined by WHO long back. Now when I'm telling I'm using NDT, so what NDT says, I'm not going to detail about NDT, I'm not going to detail about sensor integration, but how we are going to assess this child in pediatric rehabilitation when child comes to us. Okay, here this is the positive signs, this is the positive good way, and this is the negative or problematic side. Okay, here big picture view and close-up view. Suppose we start here from the big picture view. Sub social function, participation restriction. We can take example of one boy at the age of 8. Suppose parents is telling my child is able to play with his brother or sister at the home in sitting position, so this is, we can say it is participation. Okay, but what is participation restriction is, my child is unable to go to school by himself, that is called participation restriction. Now functional activities, we are going little bit more closer. Which all function is able to do with, how he is able to play? He is able to play in the sitting position. So sitting position, using both the hand he is playing. So playing in the sitting position is function. Okay, and functional activity limitations, he is unable to walk independently, that's why he is unable to go to school by himself, that's why there is a functional limitation. Okay, now we are going more and more closer. Why he is unable to do that? What is the problem? we are seeing posture and movement first in the structural integrity of multi-system. Multi-system is nothing but posture and movement. What we are seeing from our first and second year onwards in our BPT, it is beautifully taught by our teachers, and this is our main thing: biomechanics, posture and movement. What we are observing in our patient, suppose I'm giving one example. One patient is just sitting by himself and sitting with the kyphotic posture. So you are just observing from his base of support. What is his base of support? Is pelvis. So from pelvis, you start observing up. And what you are observing from the joint, suppose I am telling my joint, his joint is in the posterior, or pelvis is a posteriorly rotated, lumbar spine is flexed, thoracic spine is also flexed, cervical spine is also flexed, but that time neck is little bit extended because of this posture, flex or kyphotic posture. When you are noting down, after that you are going to assess the single system. What is single system? Whatever the observation you did in your posture and movement, you are going to justify that posture and movement with your examination. It means what you saw, what you examine is correct, and according to that you are going to give them a treatment. Suppose, as I give you example of child sitting with kyphotic posture, what could be the reason? There are so many reasons. Hamstring might be tight, hip flexor might be flexus, iliopsoas might be tight. There is a possibility of gluteus constant contraction is poor. There is abdominal weakness is there. There is rectus abdominis is tight, or there is a back extensor is over lengthened. So any could be the reason. You just have to find out from your examination. So what you saw, what you observe, just note it down. You examine it, justify yourself that what I observe is right, this is my examination, and treat that impairment, primary and secondary. You will get result. So this is ICF model in NDT. Now if child is having sensory issues, okay, we seen the physical part, we seen the muscle, we seen the strength, we started with the therapy. Now what if child is having sensory issues, child with either cerebral palsy, autism or ADHD? uh, how you are going to see that child? Okay, what is sensor integration? Sensor integration defines as a neurological process that organizes sensations from one's body and from the environment and makes it possible to use body effectively in environment. It is given by Jean Ayers in 1989. Jean Ayers is an occupational therapist. She started research in 1960s, and she has given this theory, sensor integration, in 80s. I did that course, and now this is registered on the name of Ayers sensor integration, because there are so many sensor integration theories are around, and it is flooded on net. Okay, but we are following on the Ayers sensor integration theory. And SI theory is a brain and behavior relationship. It means because of your brain, how your behavioral outcome will be. Okay, because see, we all are having sensations. I am having vestibular system, I am having tactile system, I am having proprioception system, and I cannot tell like this my system is normal. No, my vestibular, I'm sharing my personal view, my vestibular system is not normal. Okay, my vestibular system is hyperactive. I cannot sit on big merry-go-round. When I'm sitting, I'm feeling giddiness, vertigo, I start vomiting. So but I'm not going to treat that system. Why? Because that system is not my target, because that is not in my ideal activities. I'm not going to sit in that big merry-go-round every day. I'm avoiding whenever my family is sitting there. I'm just avoiding it. But same time, I have seen few of my friends, or when I'm talking in the workshops, when I'm assessing that, I've seen therapists who are having severe gravitational insecurity or severe hyperactive vestibular system. They cannot even ride their two-wheelers. They just, whenever they are taking leg up in the air, they are feeling giddiness. So that time, yes, it is life threatening and it should be treated. Okay, so we all are having sensory systems. it is working perfectly, so our behavior is good. Sensory information guides to behavioral development and occupational performance. And for child, occupational performance is just learning and play. SI focuses on three main systems: proprioception, tactile, and vestibular. Here, visual and auditory definitely plays a big role, but here this theory focuses mainly on proprioception, tactile, and vestibular. When it is coming too much, okay, when you have started lecture by 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock morning, and when it goes for 2 hours, 3 hours, so at the end of the time, end of the lecture, your brain become like this, okay. So many sensations are going, which is disorganized. It is like rush or traffic jam. So whenever I'm telling to my student in my lecture, like whenever we are treating, just see that there are not too many disorganized sensations are going towards child, because they are unable to get everything, unable to filter everything, and we are not getting good outcome as well. Sensory disorder, sensory modulation disorder, we can see in the cerebral palsy. Prematurity, as I told you earlier, premature child might be having sensory issues, developmental disabilities, learning disabilities, environmental deprivation, autism spectrum disorder, and ADHD. So any of these diagnoses, you might get the sensory modulation disorder. Signs and symptoms: over responsiveness, they are hyperactive, they are doing activity too much. Under responsive, they are hypoactive, they are not responding at all, okay. They might be having behavioral problem, speech and language delay, muscle tone and coordination problem, and learning difficulties at school. So any of this problem, you might suspect there might be having sensor issues, okay. When there is a wrong behavior issue, definitely parents will tell us that some wrong behaviors are there. Speech and language delay, parents will tell, and so many times parents come to us with the speech and language delay, but please make sure that there is difference between speech, language, and communication. All together, everything is different thing, okay. And we are concentrating more on speech instead of communication and language also. I'm not going on detail, because again that is a very large topic to discuss. Speech, language, and communication. Muscle tone and coordination, definitely as a therapist we know that how to treat that and how to assess that. Learning difficulties at school, personally in last 12 years I have come across very many patients in my clinical practice that once they started walking, I would discharge them, and once they go back to school, and they started having learning difficulties, and again they started with therapy, okay. This is few ideas like sensory domain in the tactile. What is seeking behavior? They are touching others too often or too hard. They touches or mouth their object constantly. It is seeking. Seeking means I am having their hypo. I am having something low. That's why I am seeking from outside. And avoiding means they are hyper. I have something too much. So that's why I am avoiding from you. Okay. Aggressive response to touch, withdraw from unexpected touch, or avoid activities where unexpected touch might occur, such as sand or water play. In vestibular, they are overactive or continuously seek movement by jumping, running. They are risking their behavior like climbing high or move too quickly for safety. Avoiding behavior, they fear or become sick with movement, or feet leave the ground, dislike playground or car rides. We can say this is gravitational insecurity. I'm not going in detail regarding how to assess this. If you people are more interested, you can go to Society of Indian Physiotherapist page, and there is a video on sensory modulation disorder and praxis in cerebral palsy. We have taken one webinar, me and one of my friends, and I've gone the detail how we are going to assess and how we are going to see that. Dysfunction in modulation of proprioceptive stimuli, craves jumping, bump, crash activities, bangs and taps arm, legs, constantly switching and bangs to object and sucks and hand, and avoiding behavior or respond to deep pressure touch such as hug, holding hand, comfortable, uncomfortable in jumping, running, and many other sports. Okay, so usually vestibular and proprioception you can see together as well. How we are going to assess this? There are few scales which I'm using. I am certified to use SIPT scale, and I am having SIPT kit as well in my clinic. But SIPT kit I am using, we can use only for a child which is having very good IQ. The child is not diagnosed with autism, only might be having learning disability. Child who is not taking previous therapy, only for them we can use SIPT. Honors rating just for uh, diagnose ADHD. Vanderbilt also we can use to diagnose ADHD. We can use SPM and sensory profile 2, sensory processing measures, and sensory profile 2 to diagnose sensory modulation disorder. It has been diagnosed very beautifully, but again there is a few limitations here, like SPM and sensory profile is dependence on how parents is responding. It is not upon your observation, it is upon how parents is responding on that. So this sometimes you are getting little bit different answer from parents. Okay, so you cannot always rely on that, you can rely on your clinical examination also. And there is wonderful tool called Incline for autism spectrum disorder. In 2016, government of India has included Incline to diagnose autism and give them a certificate, disability certificate, in government hospital. Okay, so Ministry of Health given notification to use Incline, because Incline is standardized Indian version of CAS rating scale, or ADOS. There are rating scales to diagnose autism, but it is Indian standardized version. What all the sensory red flags where you are going to treat it? Okay, tactile problem. I'm just talking about how in our society we are seeing the child hitting others in the school, comfortable to walk barefoot in temple or home, uncomfortable, able to mix dal rice with hand. Okay, so tactile problem again. Having problem with hair washing, hair combing and oiling, again there is a tactile problem. Vestibular, cannot jump from chair, dislike swinging, does not like games like skipping, lungri, or likes to throw in the air. So either hyper or hypo. Sensory red flags in the proprioception, likes tight hug, keep leaning on people or furniture, keep banging or hammering toys, doors or temple bell, pushes, hits or other kids in school. So proprioception and tactile both together here, pushes or hitting. Visual problem, avoid going out during Diwali or other festival due to light and crackers. Half close his eyes in sunlight, prefer to be in dark. Problem to find an object from drawer. Okay. Difficulty in copying from book or board. Difficulty to search book from bag or shelf. So these all are the problems. Definitely we are going to see that if it is a functional problem, we are going to treat it. Now we talk about general movement. We talk about cerebral palsy, GMFCS score. We talk about type of cerebral palsy. We talk about sensory issues. Now, what all the oromotor problems child might be having? Does the child bite everything in and around? Child mouth everything? Does the child eat only few preferred foods like soft food? Does the child chew the food properly? Does the child notice that when food is around mouth after meal? Does the child like to eat only cold and warm food? Teeth grinding and biting? So this we are getting in our clinic, okay, especially in our cerebral palsy patient. So what could be the reason? Now, oromotor problems with children with developmental delay and ASD, both. Okay, so let me correct here. I'm not going to talk on speech therapy. This is oromotor therapy for our kids. Oromotor problems with children with neurological disorder or preterm infants are limited variety of food acceptance, difficulty introducing spoon feeding, just they want to remain on bottle feed or breastfeed, advancing texture, if they're comfortable with semi-solid or liquid food, they are not advancing the hard texture, unable to suck, takes more time in feeding, chewing, latency might be problematic, or drooling, which is very common. Okay. Pediatric feeding disorder, as I told you, either sensory issue, motor issue, behavior issue, medical issue, and family dynamics. I'm just telling you brief about sensory and motor issues here. Why physiotherapist role plays an important role for oromotor consideration. First one is setting consideration, adaptive equipment for positioning, musculoskeletal evaluation, what we are doing, as I told you, in the ICF, Motor control and coordination, yes, we are going to see that. And endurance and strength of jaw musculature. Factor influencing oromotor skills here are structural alignment, sensory motor input, muscle tone, and oral motor patterns, and medical influence on oromotor patterns. Here, if you see structural alignment, the mouth is a reflection of postural system. Suppose see this first picture, feet is stable, hip is stable, trunk control is good, head control is good, so jaw control is good. So when there is good postural control, mouth is a good way it is giving you good function you are getting. Here in the typical head forward position, okay, from poor head shoulder trunk alignment, child just sitting like that. Okay, suppose I'm giving you one example. I'm taking this bottle and I'm drinking water in this position. That is not a problem. But if I sit like this is problematic for me because my posture is not straight. I am sitting with the kyphotic back. Suppose I am talking in this position, I am okay. But I am sitting like this, typical head forward position. It is difficult for me to talk. It is difficult for me to drink water. I'm more comfortable sitting straight. Same thing with our children with cerebral palsy or other problem, and they are sitting with the kyphotic back. So sitting consideration for a physiotherapist is must. See this child. Okay, this child was having developmental delay. He is having kyphotic backs. You see the rounded back. Okay, he was having problem with drooling and speech, chewing. He was having hypotonic, little bit sensation was also hypo. We started treating him for muscle strength, for proprioception, and now he is okay. Okay, now oral sensory issues, tactile systems, we can see the tactile sensitivity hyper, hyposensitivity, mixed sensitivity, and fluctuating sensitivity. Sometimes it is too much, sometimes it is too less. Okay, and assessment of oral structure in the facial musculature, you can see the symmetry and asymmetry, jaw symmetry and stability, lips rounding and closing, because when lips are open you cannot take your saliva inside. Okay, you cannot gulp it. When my mouth is open, I cannot gulp my saliva inside. So when child is sitting like this, they are drooling. When you are just uh, making them posture stable, lips are closed, and they are able to get their saliva inside instead of coming out. You can say this is drooling. Okay, so rounding lip, closing it is an important factor you have to see. Tongue retraction, lateralization, elevation, and depression for speech as well as for food, also chewing. Okay, 4-part treatment plan: feeding needs, sensory needs, oral skills, and speech. Definitely at a physiotherapist we can work on feeding, sensory needs, and oral skills. Okay, here few oromotor red flags are drooling, open mouth posture at rest, tongue thrust or tongue out during speech or eating. We can see in the child with hypotonia, especially in the Down syndrome, or child with dyskinetic type of cerebral palsy, tongue is moving out. So that time definitely we can work oromotor wise. So long with tongue out of mouth, stuff food in mouth, keep the food in mouth after meal, sensitivity to tooth brushing, food flavor, temperature, and texture, gagging and coughing with liquid and different texture. So sometimes we are putting food and they started doing gagging or they started doing vomiting. So we are want to desensitize that and we are going to treat that. Here I'm just giving you overview about what all the things we are going to see, that this is not a treatment. Okay, but treatment tools we are using for that, for jaw exercise strengthening, for tongue exercise, okay, for lip exercise there are different type of cups are available. Okay, and for a desensitization this type of towels are available. This is new brush, very popular among physiotherapists. This is, I most of the time patients come from big city and I'm seeing that they are having nuke brush but they don't know what to do, what is the use of nuke brush. Okay, so I'm not criticizing any particular therapist. I've seen, give them new brush, tell them to just put a brush in honey and just do it brushing in mouth. So this is not oromotor therapy with new brush. Okay, there are so many other things you have to see, you have to assess it along with sensitivity and motor part. Um, Oromotor part is over. Now, suppose child tells or parents tell, like, sir, we went to neurologist. Neurologist tell my child is having brain problem. My child is having eye problem. So we went to ophthalmologist. He said that it is normal, eyes is normal. Still, my child is unable to reach for an object. When, as a therapist, you are saying hand movement is not a problematic, not as a tone also problematic. So, what could be the issue? They might be having cortical visual impairment, or we can see cerebral visual impairment, which is new word. What is CVI? CVI is a cortical visual impairment or cerebral visual impairment caused by condition that damage the visual pathway or processing center of brain. Sometimes the structure of brain is typical, but the function of the brain is not. Might be in the metabolic condition, genetic disorder, etc. And it is differ from the ocular form of visual impairment. I'm not going to talk about ocular form where your retina or that is a problematic. I'm talking about brain problematic. Okay, so we can use the word cortical blindness sometime, bilateral loss of vision in the presence of otherwise normal eye examination. CVI is best identified and diagnosed by, as I told you, normal eye examination, medical history that include neurological problem, the presence of unique and visual behavioral characteristic. Okay, so what is visual and behavioral characteristic? Let me talk about neuroplasticity first. As neuroplasticity said, Hubel and Wiesel in 1970, they said first 3 years is very critical for neuroplasticity, especially for vision. Taylor and Overbixer said fast development in 10 months and slow development in 10 to 10 years. Atkinson said in 1984 that birth to 6 months is very critical for neuroplasticity, especially for vision. So now our question is, what is early age we can track? And conclusion is most opportune time for meaningful stimulation in all likelihood occurs in early infancy or first 2 years of life to work on vision. Okay, how to work on vision? That is the first question, because I have seen so many centers. There is one dark room, there is one different our marriage lights, or they are lighting, they are putting their lighting series, they are putting what we are using in our Diwali or a festival time. They are just switching it on, they are telling this is vision therapy. Okay, I had experience, I discussed with one therapist, and the therapist discussed with me like, no, you are, what you are telling is not vision therapy. We are having vision room, dark room is a vision therapy. Okay, my question is how you are going to assess it. I have a question now. Okay, there is beautiful technique called Roman Lenzi technique, where you are going to see visual and behavioral characteristic of children with CVI. This is few behavioral characteristic, and I am explaining each now. First one, we are going to see color preference. Prefer color can serve as a visual anchor. Suppose stylish, we are showing few colors and child is responding to one color, that color is a visual anchor. Therapists, those who know the taping, they know the word what is anchor. Okay, so from that is the first we are going to start visual stimulation from that anchor. Okay, attraction to color is unique characteristic associated with CVI, and Lenzi and Roman, they have reported 76 kids 6 months to 15 years of age, and they found out that 55% are attracted toward red color preference, 34 are towards yellow color, and only 11% are green, pink, and blue. So red color definitely is attracted to our eyes. When so many people are there with the white or blue color, and one people or one person come with the red color clothes, you can definitely, your eyes will go towards that. So red color is more preferable for child as well. So color preference. Second one, need for a movement. Okay, this is, this is pom pom. Okay, majority of the children with CVI having tendency to be attracted towards the object that are properties of movement over those are remain stationary. So movement object that is moving, it is more attracted than object which is not moving. Okay, child is visually alert to the object that are in motion. Okay, when something is moving, child is definitely watching towards that. Okay, here you are able to see the reflection, because when we are seeing the pom pom, okay, this is a single color pom pom I put because we are getting multicolor pom pom also, but purposefully I have used this pictures because this all are single color pom pom. It is going reflection, it is giving movement also. Okay, and it is colorful. All the colors I am having in my clinic to assess this. When I'm showing that child sometime having showing the preference for color, as I told you first. Okay, now see this, in early infancy, baby will see only the movement. They doesn't know what is the color, they what is know what is the toy it is. They are just sure what's the object dangling overhead before they recognize detail of it, like how to make a voice, or when they are touching, voice is coming, they doesn't know. So like this book, they are just turning the page, they doesn't know what animal, what photograph is there inside. When they are recognizing in the early infant stage, they are just seeing how the page is moving, they doesn't concentrate what is there inside. Okay, so motion and deflection is an extremely strong invasive effect on visual system. Visual latency, delayed response in looking from the time a target is present into the time target is visual regarded. And latency may vary with object, color of object, complexity of object, or vary the number of element involved, which I'm going to talk in later slides. It is difficult to define amount of time for waiting of response, like how much time you need to wait till child give a response, and it is varies, and with your clinical experience only you can find out. Difficulty in visual complexity, here complexity of pattern. Children with CVI is more consistent visual response to object with simple pattern or color on surface. Okay, so when you are showing child one object, okay, and that having background is very complex, it is very difficult to recognize. But when you are showing one color object with background is a simple, either white or black or any color, child will able to recognize more easily. Okay, complexity of array, sometimes familiar or favorite color object will not be recognized because of complexity of array, and it refers as a visual crowding. See this picture, and at the first try you are definitely able to see clown after a little bit time, because there are so many faces. After that you are able to see this clown. Okay, you cannot able to recognize very easily. Now, are you able to see any face in this picture? No, we are not. But you are able to see so many known faces in this picture. What is different between this picture and this picture? Because this is towards near vision. Okay, camera lens is more near vision. So able to see the face, that's why we are able to recognize this face. Okay, complexity of sensory environment. Visual attention can occur only when there is no distraction from other stimuli like touch, voice, and smell. This is main mistakes our parents are doing. Okay, they are touching, or they are touching on body and they are showing the toys. They are doing so many noise with the toys and they are showing it. Okay, a smell and no, vision, it cannot go together. It should go together, but you cannot assess initially when there is a complexity. Okay, so you can add other stimuli in sequence, not stimuli in sequence, not simultaneous, not both together initially when child is not responding. Okay, lighting gaze and non-purposeful gaze, you might have seen this type of patient in your clinic. Okay, it is seen in kids who spend prolonged time of gazing primary source of light, either it is artificial or natural. Parents might be telling them, okay, my child is able to see this thing, tube light. He know where tube light is. He know where sun is. Okay, where sunlight is coming from window. But when you are showing the object, they are unable to see. Early infancy, during birth, it is normal. But later age, if they are just able to see towards that primary source of light, either tube light or either light coming from your window or either it is sunlight, it is normal development is delayed. Okay, and non-purposeful gaze, the inability to visually attend any specific targets. They're just seeing here and there, but they are unable to target on specific things. Okay, so this is non-purposeful gaze, that is abnormal. Difficulty in distance viewing, it is closely linked with characteristic of complexity. As I told you earlier, I show you a picture of stadium. Okay, when we are far unable to see, when we are coming closer, we are able to see so many recognized face. Closer the object move towards the face, the more the background is obscured for viewer. It means here, from here I am able to see my hand only, not my laptop. But as I go far, I'm able to see the laptop screen on background along with my hand. Just try yourself. Okay, suppose in this picture, how many things you are able to see? You are able to see the trees, you are able to see the sky, you are able to see the signboard, you are able to see the roads, so many things. Okay, now we are just zooming in. How many things you are able to see? Only one stop sign. Okay, so the greater the number of visual details on the background, the greater the difficulty. When background is plain, you can able to see the target or object very easily. Let me give you other example. See this photograph of this man standing. Definitely our eyes able to see this man, but you see the background, there are so many colorful things are there. See the clothes he has wear, so many colorful things. Here compared to this picture, when we are able to see this girl, we are able to see only three colors in background: blue, green and white. So we are able to see more clearly than this picture. If we go to the third picture, we are able to see only two colors in background. One is brownish black and white, or greenish black, this one, and white. In top of that, he has got blue color, so we are able to see this boy more clearly. If we go to this picture, only two color, blue and white, and backside vision is clear, so we are able to see this man more clearly than the boy in this picture. Okay, here we are able to see more clearly. Now if we go to the this picture, here in this picture you see background is full white, and on top of that he wore red color shirt. So definitely yes, this is, we are able to, our eyes able to see this picture more clearly. Same in child, when background is clear, good color like red is there, child is able to see the toy more clearly. This is how you are going to see the visual characteristic. Okay, absent and atypical visual reflexes, visual blink and visual threat reflex. Visual blink reflex is when you are touching the child at the bridge of the nose, he or she blinks simultaneously with touch. And visual threat response, when your hand move quickly towards the face of the midline, child reflectively blink in response to the incoming visual threat. They just blink it. Okay, it is atypical or absent in child with CVI. Okay, difficulty with visual novelty. I don't know how many of you have know this person. Okay, he is a renowned physiotherapist in Australia. His name is David Butler. Okay, who wrote the book on neural mobilization. Okay, and you see the way he is wearing the shirts. It is always a funky red shirt, green shirt and yellow tie. Okay, why? Because when something new is there, okay, child will see, or we are also seeing that. Whenever I heard that whenever he is taking workshop, he always wear this type of colorful clothes. Why? Because then all the attention will be there towards him. Okay, I have experienced in my clinic so many times parents are telling child is not able to see toys in home, but when I'm showing toys first time in my clinic, they are seeing. Why? Because this is something new which is not there at home. So something new or novel, they are showing visual preference to new things. Okay, how you are going to assess? There is a range assessment. Here evaluation 1, 2 and 3, red, blue and green color pen you are using for marking. Rating 1 and rating 2 you are using, and combine both rating to get overall CVI range. Here CVI range 1 to 10. 1 to 2 is a total problematic, 3 to 4 is better, 5 to 6 is little better, 7 to 8 is more better, and 9 to 10 is almost normal. So CVI range, as I told you, student function with minimal visual response, they are not responding or minimal response. CVI range 3 to 4, student function with more consistent visual response. Range 5 to 6, student use vision for functional tasks. 7 to 8, student demonstrate visual curiosity. And age 9 to 10, students spontaneously use vision for most of the functional activities. Okay, so this is the range assessment. Here also, as I told you, this is just a brief idea how we are going to treat it as a different thing, but you know visual characteristic of vision, definitely you can get idea about the treatment also, but according to that you need to get the range first. After that you see the range from 1 to 2, if they are reaching to 9 to 10, it means you are on the normal side. Okay, goal of the treatment, as I said, functional use of vision in ADL instead of just visual stimulation. Don't give like show this toy for 10 times, show this color for half an hour, show this light for 15 minutes. No, visual stimulation is not. Functional use of vision for writing, for playing, for ADL activities, for eating, for anything. Functional use of vision is important. So I talk so many things. I talk about cerebral palsy, general movement, sense integration a little bit. I talk about oromotor part. I talk about vision. So what is ultimately goal of therapy when patient comes to us in our clinic? Good range of motion, good muscle strength, good muscle length, good trunk control, good sensor integration, good vision, good oromotor control, whatever goal we are needed. Okay, definitely this all things are needed for our patient, but our goal should be function with fun. It is always should be function. Okay, see this all brushing with standing, taking bath, buttoning, shoelacing, and playing with mask on. Definitely in COVID era, playing with mask on. Okay, so this is function. We are focusing on function instead of just range of motion, length, strength, control, integration, and vision. If I am having good sense integration but I'm not using it, it is useless. Okay, if I'm having good range of motion, length and strength, and I'm not using for function, it is useless. Okay, now question comes to us. You talk so many things. You talk about NDT little bit, you talk about sensor integration. What evidence says that? Because whenever we are discussing with some doctor, they are asking, what evidence do you have in your therapy? So let's talk about evidence. Okay, first, passive range of motion. Most of the time whenever I am sending patient to therapist in some areas, and initially if we are not friends or we are not working together anytime, I heard that I'm doing passive movement. Okay, passive movement is not way of preference, and the passive exercise protocol did not have any effect on lower extremity goniometric measurement in participants. One study published in 2002. And passive movement is like this picture. You are just pushing your child for therapy. Child is not doing anything by himself. Why child is coming to us? To be independent, not for dependency, not for range of motion, not for strength, not for length. They are coming for ADL activities. Okay. Massage. Parents comes to a specially term or preterm age and they are asking me, sir, can we do the massage? Okay. There are few studies. I did so many workshops in massage. I attended. I have not taught. I attended workshops on massage. I learned how to do massage. I'm using in few uh, conditions like on facial paralysis or Bell's palsy. I'm using massage and I'm getting very good results. Okay, but few tight muscles I'm using massage and I'm getting very good results. Preterm neonates receiving massage therapy exhibit greater weight gain and increased vagal tone and gastric motility during and immediately after treatment. In 2005 and 2008, one study shows that massage therapy showed fewer stress behavior and less activity from the first day to last day of the study. Okay, so behavior is less stressful. They are showing good result with massage. This is preterm infant I'm talking. Okay, when it comes to our spastic patient or cerebral palsy patient, I usually disagree with them to do the massage at home, though massage show good results, because I have seen the parents doing massage and they are dislocating shoulder or hip, or sometimes because of massage, because they are activating astroceptors of muscles, because of too much sensation, muscles become tight, more spastic, tone increased. So that's why I refuse parents to do massage at home when they are having neurological problem. But yes, massage shows good result if you are doing with your experienced hand. Sometimes yes, there is a dilemma, like can we tell ourselves as a massage therapist? But that time I feel no, we are not a massage therapist, we are exercise therapist or we are a physiotherapist. Okay. Passive stretching. Passive stretching and engaging in active movement training in children with cerebral palsy. It demonstrates improvement in joint biomechanical properties, motor control performance, and functional capability of balance and activity. So not only passive stretching, but do the active movement along with passive stretching with give good results. Study published in 2011. Now let me told you I have experience about, like when we are doing stretching, patient might be feeling pain because our child with cerebral palsy already having so many musculoskeletal problems. So when you are doing too much stretching, I've seen patient comes to me when they are doing treated by non-qualified therapist, and they might be having fractured neck of femur, the dislocated hip. So because hamstring might be too tight, or shoulder dislocation because of stretching. So I always suggest that instead of doing passive stretching or ballistic stretching, we can do MFR. Okay, passive stretching might cause rupture in the muscle, especially muscle sarcomere, actin myosin level. So better we can shift to MFR if we need muscle length. Stretching evidence is all there. There was limited evidence in manual stretching can increase range of motion, reduce spasticity, but few studies say that spasticity decrease with slow and continuous stretching. So there is dilemma. Individual studies using, that is a review of literature and done in 2012, and this review stated that positional stretching, it means good positioning either with AFO or with other SS device, and few randomized control trial using electrical stimulation in addition to manual stretching, okay, lead to better outcome for reducing spasticity and increasing passive range of motion compared to manual stretching alone. So stimulation and stretching is both together is a good idea. Okay, now MFR, I'm using MFR in my clinic. Definitely MFR is effective to reduce spasticity in spastic diabetic cerebral palsy, published in 2018. MFR along with conventional treatment reduce spasticity in calf, hamstring, adductor of hip, and spastic diplegic subjects, published in 2014. MFR is more effective than foam rolling to reduce hamstring spasticity in spastic diplegic CP, published in 2019. And MFR was effective method for management of plantar flexor spasticity in short term, and there was a carryover effect of favor of MFR, published in 2020. So it shows that MFR having good carryover capacity to elongate the muscles instead of stretching. So when patient is feeling, instead of stretching, we can give MFR. Okay, because for your goal you need good muscle length, you can use MFR, then stretching. Positioning, yes, it is important. Okay, in 2001, this study shows position the child to stretch the spastic muscles, decrease the sensitivity of stretch reflex, and the brainstem reflex that triggers the spasticity. So positioning definitely helps to child. Also, the therapist should teach the position to the family so that child lies and sits in the way most of the time at home. Okay, child usually lying or sitting. Tell Teach them good positioning technique. Okay, see here, this is global pattern of extension. Here, how we are going to make the child to sit? Make the sit with this type of seater. Okay, or if child is sitting in this way, make them to supine in this way with good positioning. If child is supine in this way with extension, make them to sit with full support. Okay, if child is see, this is the wrong way of sitting in wheelchair, this is the right way of sitting in wheelchair. Always, as a therapist, as a physiotherapist, we are more concerned about how we are going to maintain their position or good posture. Here, global pattern of flexion, hips is too bent, she falls forward. So definitely we are putting this way to play, or we can use in therapy. Flexion here, definitely we can use child to help in standing way. This is just like, there's one book called Disabled Village Child, and this few pictures are taken from that. Very good book, available free of cost on net. Disabled Village Child. Whenever those who are working in CBR or those working in the village side, these books are giving very good ideas. Okay, and child sitting in the W sitting position, definitely you can work like this. Okay, now main question comes, how much duration? And that is always a controversy about the duration. Okay, because I've seen the patient, those who are doing therapy for a full week. Okay, when I was doing my entity certification, I saw that patients are getting good results for doing therapy thrice a week or twice a week also, when you are working specifically or properly on the goal. Okay, so this study in 2020 shows that to improve individual goal, child need to practice that goal for more than 14 to 25 hours, combining face-to-face therapy with home practice. So at home and at clinic, all together is 14 to 25 hours. For upper limb function, child need to practice 30 to 40 hours, combining face-to-face therapy with home practice. So definitely here, home program plays an important role along with us. Okay, intervention that set functional goal and involve actual practice of this goal leads to the goal achievement at the lower dose also than general upper limb motor training. So when you are working on specific goal, make them to practice that goal again and again. They are responding in much better way. Now what could be the frequency? How often should I come to your clinic? 1 to 2 hours per week for 6 months or longer is the most commonly implemented frequency of dose for children with CP 6 to 24 months of age. This study suggests in 2019, but decision about frequency is often made based on clinical reasoning, scheduling, not on the principle of rehabilitation, child development, and evidence from valid RCPs. Okay, I'm calling the child 45 minutes 3 times a week. It means 2 hours and 15 minutes. Yes. Okay. And suppose one therapist is calling child every day. What all the things to be considered there? As a therapist, as a pediatric therapist, what I consider, I always ask from where you are coming. If your house is 100 kilometers away from my clinic, definitely I'm not going to call them every day. If the child doesn't have so much problem, I'm not going to call them every day. If they doesn't have money or financial problem, because in our India, this therapy are money spent by parents, not by insurance company like Western side. Okay, so definitely I'm going to consider all these things instead of scheduling and reasoning. But same time, when patient comes to me after surgery or after Botox, or patients are going to stay here only for 15 days, I just wanted to teach so many things, because when they are going back, they doesn't have any therapist there at their hometown or their village. I'm going to call them every day because they need therapy. So frequency is always depends on your clinical reasoning, your scheduling, not always depend on child development, rehabilitation, and evidence of RCT. Here one study did in India. Okay, it was observational, just so many review of literature. Okay, Jindal et al. In 2019, it published in Developmental Medicine and Child Neurology Journal. Okay, here you see here exercise and play, education and counseling. This is the topic they've searched on net. This all therapy or they are using in cerebral palsy rehabilitation types. Okay, exercise and play, there are this many studies available. Out of that, this many studies in bracket, they have taken 7 studies. For education and counseling, this many studies are available and 5 studies they have taken. For casting, orthosis and brace, they have taken 5 studies. For TENS, 4, facial release, 4 studies. CIMT and modify constraint induced movement therapy, 4 studies. SI and vibration, 3 studies. PNF, out of 3,495 studies, only 2 studies they have taken. Suit and case therapy, 2 studies. Virtual reality, 1, and Walker, out of 38, 1 studies they have taken. This is Indian scenario, how many studies they have taken, and studies conclude this all therapies it is doing in India. Now we see the full world scenario. Okay, and in 2019, Novak has published this study in Australian Occupational Therapy Journal. Okay, you see here, this is in the different diagnosis. Okay, comparative comparison of effectiveness of different occupational therapy indicator in different diagnosis. You can see the CIMT here, down you see here, don't do it. NDT, no. Handwriting, sensory approach, no. Sensor integration in behavioral outcome, no. Function in sensor integration, no. These are the outcomes. Okay, motor outcome, behavior, and function. It says NDT, sensor integration, don't do it. In orange, worth line. This thing definitely you can try. Probably you can do, probably not. It's orange one. Okay. Here, CIMT, home program, goal directed training, bimanual training for motor. Treadmill training you can do. For ABA you can do. Pain management, economics. Here family centered therapy, goal direction training, home program you can do. Okay, don't do sensory approaches in ASD, because here down they have written differential diagnosis called ASD, autism spectrum disorder. Here cerebral palsy. Okay, developmental coordination disorder. So they've seen in which all techniques are effective in which all diagnosis. See this one, cognitive and parent outcome. Here EI developmental early intervention developmental approach or preterm used. Okay, for ADHD, cognitive function alert used. Coaching, problem solving, mindfulness, and parents education is used here. Okay, joint attention, peer moderation you can use. Here again, sensor integration for cognitive input you cannot use. I talk about sensor integration, I talk about sensor integration, I talk about NDT initially. I'm using in my clinic. Okay, I'm teaching that courses about sensor integration. I'm teaching that courses about NDT. But studies which is supported there, it is not available. Why? Because I have seen or I have gone through so many studies here. And I found out that people, those who have did, because these people has they just collaborated the studies, okay, they have not did proper study. This is the review of literature. So many literatures are available, they reviewed it and they put it on paper. As a clinician, I have seen that people, those who did study on NDT, they are not NDT certified. They doesn't know what is going on NDT now. Those who did study on sensor integration are not, might not get certified themselves in sensor integration. There are so many domains to be seen in sensor integration. Okay. Again, Novak only published second study in 2020. Here, just see here first. Observational study only, smaller circle, 1 to 3 randomized control trial, little bit bigger circle, medium circle, 4 to 15 randomized control trial, and biggest circle, 15 plus randomized control trial. Okay. Here you see when they are writing NDT original passive form, which was given by Bobas in 60s. Now NDT is not passive. Sometime when you are hearing some people are telling NDT is passive movement or reflex, this is not NDT. Current NDT is working on function, okay, along with ICF model. So this paper given NDT original form, passive form was not working. But now as a clinician, I am seeing changes in my clinic. Sensor integration for motor skill, definitely we know for motor skill, sensory integration is not working at all, because for motor skill we need to work more on motor problems. But yes, sensory issues might be there. You are going to work on sensory issue as well for sensory problems. Okay, this orange, probably you can do that. Probably you can do that. Okay, here probably you don't do that. So NDT, Vita, I know definitely we are not using now in our clinic because it was based on reflex. Okay, game therapy, here you can see the Botox for physiotherapy, resistance training, electrical stimulation, mobility training, physical activity, partial body weight support treadmill training. It's having good results. Orange is definitely 4 to 15 studies are available. Here green, bimanual task for MOTA, environmental enrichment program, CIMT, hippotherapy for walking speed, partial body weight system, because here they have taken for a gross motor. Here they are taking for a walking speed. So when you are seeing this study for a particular problem, they have seen that study. Okay. For strain training in muscle strength, studies available. Hand function and gross motor, goal directed training, studies available. Mobility training, walking speed, it is good. Treadmill training again for endurance, gross motor, it is good. So, okay. Early intervention, here you can see it's orange. Definitely, probably you don't do, you can do NDT original passive form, but as I told you, NDT original passive form is not existence now. Okay, it is gone. That words has been gone. Reflex, inhibition, posture, that words has been gone now. It has been changed now. Okay, see, so I was here, I was talking about, see here, I was talking about early intervention NDTs. Sometimes you can do, but there are game therapy, motor training, CAMT, definitely you can use. For tone, Botox and selective dorsal azotomy, definitely it reduces the spasticity. Plus intrathecal baclofen, diazepam reduce spasticity. So down here you are going to see which condition or which function you are treating. Okay, for hip deformity, definitely osteotomy is not sometimes useful. Equinus correction useful. Soft tissue injuries. Okay, so here only thing, passive movement is not everywhere. Passive movement is not useful anywhere. Okay, here motor, sensory, early intervention, tone and contracture. You can see here there is a pain, sleep, pulmonary, meal time, oral health, communication, cognition, parental outcome. Okay, so here again, self-care for function. Only red here is passive form of entity, hyperbaric oxygen. Other than that, here so many animal assisted things for pain, massage, for pulmonary exercise, for gastrotomy, for GIT, okay, and drooling buttocks, for drooling, few medicines you are use or behavioral intervention, oral sensory motor you can use definitely. Okay, so here down you are seeing the problem, and up there is a therapy. Okay, here there is a main problem. So you can definitely go directed home program, complementary therapy. If you want, anyone want this study, definitely you can contact me. I will send this full study to read. Okay, my personal clinical experience is I am physiotherapist. I can never tell myself I am NDT therapist. I can never tell myself I am sense integration therapist. I have heard few people were telling I am developmental therapist. Few people were telling I am neonatal therapist. But my degree is physiotherapist. I am physical therapist working with so many techniques. This is tools in my toolbox. Whatever the technique is, and child should get function. Always consider these are the myths. Okay, I have heard from therapists doing passive movement is NDT. No, always work for function. That is NDT. Rubbing and scrubbing different texture is sensor integration. And I have seen patient when cross out with me with general therapists, those who are not working special in pediatrics, or those who are not trained in sensor integration, and they are just that patients are telling me that we have been given a brush or different texture to scrub on full body. What effect it causes? Sensor integration only is tactile. Either tactile is hyper or hypoactive. Nobody knows. Without assessment, you are just giving rubbing and scrubbing different texture on body is not sensor integration. Showing different lights in dark room is vision therapy. No, as I told you, our child with CVI is behaving in so many different ways. So there are behavioral characteristics. Definitely, you are going to see that characteristic. You are going to assess the range, and you are going to treat that accordingly. That is called vision therapy. Sitting in the dark room and showing different light is not vision therapy. Rubbing new brush in mouth, with or without dipping in honey, is oromotor therapy. I've seen child so many of I can not uneducated therapist, not physio, uneducated therapist. We had a course in long time back. Those who are 10 pass, 12 pass, and they are doing physiotherapy, putting brush in the mouth with honey is on that, scrub everywhere, rub everywhere. This is oromotor therapy. And what happens? Drooling increase. Who cares what is sensation? Who cares about jaw musculature or strength? Who cares about posture? No one knows anything. Just work on oromotor. This is not oromotor things. Okay, so many things you have to see. So what is the take home message? No passive therapy, either sensor integration, either NDT, or either whatever the technique you are using. No passive therapy. It is just like you are pulling it. Take home message again, facilitate the function, add fun to your therapy, just play. Consider the parent situation while deciding the goal, either mental situation or either financial situation, everything. If parents are ready to come every day, yes, you can call. But if child doesn't need, explain them. Child doesn't need everyday therapy because parents want child to be all right as soon as possible. Sometimes parents' financial condition is not good, so okay, tell them to come once or twice a week, walk whatever the best you can, okay, with functional goal. So see the child condition. When you are parents, as a parents, I know getting up early, getting up, prepare myself, prepare my child, and run for a therapy. Next day, same situation. Day after tomorrow, same situation. So that is always a problematic. Okay, so consider parent situation for goal discuss with pediatric physiotherapist. If you doesn't know what to do, there are multiple people working excellent way in the pediatric field in almost on all cities, and teamwork, pediatrician, pediatric neurologist, pediatric physiotherapist, and pediatric orthosurgeon. When patient comes to us, I usually discuss with all of them, those who are referring with referring pediatrician or referring pediatric neurologist, what they are feeling, because my always concern is clinically neurological side they are saying much better than us, but physiotherapy side is our problem, our diagnosis is better than them. Okay, so it is always combined team effort, we are treating them. So thank you, everyone. Thank you first Krista, who helped me to build for this first early intervention, first presentation, general movement. Gujarat Government Physiotherapy Association, Disha and Dr. Disha and Hardik, who invited me to take this lecture. Society of Indian Physiotherapists, because Society of Indian Physiotherapists Zoom platform we are using for this recording, and especially for parents and kids whose faces I was able to bring the smile. So thank you very much for your time. Anything else? Yes, Dr. Disha is there on screen now. Disha, I am just stopping my screen sharing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. It was really very informative in all aspects, starting from general movement assessment, cerebral palsy, oromotor, and cerebrovisual impairment, everything. And sir, you have covered and combined all the topics very nicely. And this is definitely going to be benefited to all our students and all practicing physiotherapists for sure. Now, sir, let's go to the some questions and queries discussion part, which may arise from our viewers.
Okay.
So, sir, my first question is there any particular outcome measures for sensory functions?
Yes, as I told you, sensory profile 2, sensory processing measures you can use for sensory modulation. Okay, and for learning disability there are SIPT, but all people are not trained to use SIPT, so I'm not using SIPT for all the patients also. But sensory profile 2 and sensory processing measure is available, you can buy it, I have in my clinic and we are using. So yes, that outcome measures you can use, the tools you can use to get sensory problems in the cerebral palsy also, along with your autism and ADHD.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir. Now, so next thing I want to ask is, like as we have discussed the general movement assessment from very early stage. Now, sir, like how to we do earliest sensory assessment?
Sensory assessment usually we can start doing from the birth also, because sensory profile 2, it is available, infant is available from 0 to 6 months.
Okay.
And that time sensory issues might be different, because that time main function of the child is sucking, feeding.
Yes.
Okay, when
Yes,
I
sir.
have seen the child, when somebody is touching, child started crying at the infant or preterm age. When somebody is touching them in the NICU, child's behavior is different, they are stressful. Okay, their posture is become different. So this all are sensory issues. From NICU day 1 onwards, you can start seeing sensory problem as well.
Okay. Okay. That's very true, sir. Thank you so much. Now, sir, last thing I want to ask you that for pediatric patient, we all know that the treatment should be started as early as possible. But, sir, when to stop the treatment?
Okay.
What would you like to say?
uh, Good question, because I've seen patients, when patients are stopping it, when they're getting good whatever the goal they wanted to achieve, they achieved it and they stopped it. Suppose the patient comes to me and they're asking me, okay sir, I want my child to walk. Once they started walking, we stop the therapy mutually. Second
Okay.
thing, sometimes you are not getting good results. Okay, so I explain to parents that okay, now this is time to stop regular therapy, because till now we are working something for to achieve some goal. Now after this age, we are going to maintain this position. Your child does not have any deformity till now, we are working towards maintain this same posture. We doesn't want any deformity in future. So now onwards, we are going to stop regular therapy and we are going to work only once a week or once in a 15 days or once a month, whatever is convenient for patient. Because that age, suppose my clinic is on second floor, I don't know about other people, but it is very difficult to get patient on second floor when there is no lift. Okay, so there is a constraint we are having. So that time I'm talking them, okay, you don't come to clinic, we are going to stop, do home program. I'm teaching them positioning and we are gradually stopping them.
Okay. That's very true. Absolutely true, sir. So thank you so much, sir, for this spending valuable time and enhancing our knowledge so thoroughly and deeply. I'm thankful to you on behalf of our whole GGPA team. And in future also, we look forward for more such informative and interactive sessions. And so the take-home message for our fellow physiotherapists for today is they should, considering all the newer and right concept, keeping in their mind, but the more focus is definitely on function, function, and function. And at last, I would like to say thanks to all our viewers for spending their time and giving the valuable feedback and comments. Thank you so much, sir, once again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.